As anti-Semitism surges around the globe, the past holds crucial insights for combating the world's oldest hatred. For centuries, Christian anti-Jewish teachings embedded anti-Semitism into Western civilization, fueling hostility toward Jews. False charges, such as Jews as Christ killers, led to centuries of persecution. Blood libels, pogroms, expulsions. During the Holocaust, even as there were righteous among the nations who risked their lives to save Jews, far too many in Christian Europe were perpetrators or silent. And in the aftermath, a reckoning began. Moved by a meeting with French Jewish historian Jules Itzhak, whose family members were murdered in Auschwitz, Pope John XXIII put Jewish relations on the Vatican II agenda, appointing Cardinal Augustin Bea to lead the shift. AJC played a pivotal role, bringing the legendary Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel into the conversation to persuade the Vatican Council to remove from church teachings any anti-Semitic rhetoric. That included the charge of deicide, historically used throughout history to label Jews as Christ killers. Through the building of bridges with Catholic leaders, a transformation in Jewish-Christian relations began, a process that continues today. It all culminated in a historic breakthrough in Catholic-Jewish relations on October 28, 1965, with the promulgation of Nostra Aetate, the Church's declaration on the relation of the Church to non-Christian religions, rejecting the charge of collective Jewish guilt in the killing of Jesus, denouncing anti-Semitism, affirming God's eternal covenant with the Jewish people, and recognizing Christianity's roots in Judaism. In the 60 years since, AJC has continued to play a leading role in Catholic-Jewish relations around the world. AJC has continued to meet with successive popes and build one-on-one relationships with Catholic leaders. AJC's advocacy launched joint relief efforts and interfaith teaching exchanges. With AJC's leadership, post-Nostra Aetate Catholic teachings were applied to the centuries-old Ober-Ammergau Passion Play, stripping it of anti-Semitic tropes. Likewise, AJC has been a strong voice against the global persecution of Christians. A great moment in the journey was the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Vatican and Israel. And today, AJC invigorates the relationship with groundbreaking initiatives like Translate Hate, Catholic Edition, produced with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, upholding the Church's commitment to combating anti-Semitism as sin. While there are challenges from time to time, the legacy of Nostra Aetate and progress since then inspire us to persevere. Inspired by Nostra Aetate, AJC continues building bridges with other faiths, including Islam. We honor Nostra Aetate and remain committed to strengthening bonds and fighting anti-Semitism. AJC, advancing Jewish-Christian relations for 60 years and beyond.
Please welcome AJC Executive Council member, Amy Ragen.
Good morning. Throughout this year, we are marking the 60th anniversary of Nostra Aetate, with pride in our role in helping to bring it to life and advance its message, as described in the video. We are celebrating this anniversary in order to renew our commitment to Catholic-Jewish relations and our wider interreligious work for which AJC is preeminent in the Jewish world. As we celebrate this anniversary, it is especially appropriate that we are honoring Rabbi David Rosen upon his retirement from AJC. Both Nostra Aetate, which revolutionized Catholic-Jewish relations for the better, and David have left indelible and positive impacts upon interreligious relations. But first, we acknowledge the passing of Pope Francis of blessed memory. We are with our Catholic brothers and sisters during this moment of mourning and transition. We thought it best to tell the story of David's remarkable career through words and photos which speak for themselves. David is a giant of the interreligious field, bringing honor to AJC, the Jewish people, and humanity's religious diversity. David's career has in many ways been an embodiment of AJC's global advocacy work. His achievements and relationships have immeasurably advanced understanding of Jews and Judaism among the most influential religious leaders of the world. Within Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and beyond, and thus their billions of followers over multiple generations. Through his efforts, David has strengthened the safety and security of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Faith leaders around the world turn to him more than anyone else as the ambassador of the Jewish people. In addition to serving as the chief rabbi of Ireland, being the first Israeli citizen and Orthodox rabbi knighted by the Catholic Church, and his appointment as commander of the Order of the British Empire, David has led at the highest level of the most important interreligious organizations in the world. Today, he serves as the special interfaith and advisor to the Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi, encompassing a church, a mosque, and a synagogue, which is the capstone emblematic of all he has made possible. David is the interfaith diplomat par excellence, a principled man of character, a tireless teacher of the Torah to the world, and a selfless mentor to his many disciples. We are so pleased that he is here from Jerusalem with his extraordinary wife, Sharon, alongside family members, friends, AJC colleagues, and all of us to share this moment of appreciation. So, how does one thank David for his 23 years of service? Not easily, but we have a trifecta of gifts. First, David is being honored with the inaugural AJC Nostra Aetate at 60 award for bringing his teachings to life. He sets the gold standard for this new award. Second, the physical award is a statuette of the Synagoga and Ecclesia in Our Time sculpture that was commissioned by St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia for the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate. It envisions synagogue and church, Judaism and Christianity, in friendship, studying their sacred texts together as sisters learning from one another. Third, a beautiful tribute book with testimonies from religious leaders, David's colleagues and proteges, and the photos we displayed today, and many more. In a moment, we will have the opportunity to hear from David in conversation with AJC Director of Interreligious Affairs, Rabbi Noah Marins. But first, please join me in expressing our thanks for David and his service to AJC and the Jewish people as he joins me on stage. Nostra Aetate at 60 Award, presented to Rabbi David Rosen in recognition of unparalleled, decades-long and exemplary leadership in interreligious affairs. Mazel tov, David, and please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Abby.
Mazal Tov, my dear David.
Thank you, Noam. That was a little bit over the top, but I'm very grateful.
Well, we're going to give you an opportunity to say more than just one sentence in response.
Well, I have so much to be grateful to AJC for almost a quarter century of enabling me to do the work that I've done. It's been a very special privilege. The first contact I had with AJC that led towards my assuming the position was actually with Marty Kaplan, who became my first chairman. But it was actually Shula Bahat who contacted me because David Harris was on sabbatical in Geneva. And she said, we're looking for a successor for Jim Rudin. Would you be interested? So I said, well, I think that the AJC is the most important organization in the world as far as interfaith relations. Your record is second to none, but I'm not leaving Jerusalem. She said, no, we will appoint you as our International Director of Interreligious Affairs, and there will be a US director under you. We don't want you to leave Jerusalem. We want to make a statement. She said, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. For Zion goes forth the word of the Lord, goes forth et Torah, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, which was lovely. So I was very excited. But it was very arduous at the beginning because I had to come over to the States every 2 or 3 months. And then I was the beneficiary of the financial downturn in 2008, which in the end you were the beneficiary of too. Because one of the ways that the organization and the uncertainty of that moment was able to be able to cut back some of the expenses was through travel, and I was causing an enormous amount of an expense with my travel. So as a result, my US director became independent of me, and I was responsible for the rest of the world. And that was Gary Greenebaum at the time, and you succeeded him. And I've had wonderful colleagues, of course you and all of the others who've worked together in this field, some within the department, others through different, what were once upon a time called chapters, now offices. Allow me, however, to give special mention to the person who is my right hand throughout most of that time, who is with us, and that's Avril Promislo. And please allow me to be a little bit personal. I've got my wonderful family members here, but of course there is the muse of my life, the love of my life, Sharon, without whom I would be not only lost personally, she's not only my personal partner in life, but also very much a vocational partner. And as you know, in her work with Search for Common Ground became something of an international expert in the area of religious freedom. So I've been very blessed, both personally, both in my place of domicile, both in the extent that we've been able to impact in Israel on the field of interfaith relations, and AJC's work has been very important there, but amazingly throughout the world, building on the legacy of Mark Tannenbaum and Jim Rudin. The Catholic Church, when it turns for the Synod on the Middle East, turned to AJC. We were the only one to speak there upon the whole question of the future of the Christian presence in the Holy Land. When they have, on the 50th anniversary, the document on the gifts and calling of God, it's AJC's representative who is the respondent to the cardinal presenting. I mean,
he means David Rosen as AJC's representative.
Well, that's true, but it's the AJC representative, and it's AJC's kudos and standing that actually is so remarkable. And that is, when I was approached, after I was approached by Shula, in Jerusalem at the time was a great friend who was something of a mentor, who was from the same denomination as yourself, by the name of Rabbi Arthur Hertzberg. And we actually met at that time, and I told him I'd been approached by AJC. He said, you know, David, there are organizations in the Jewish world that work in similar fields, fighting the bad guys, trying to promote the well-being of the Jewish people, but there is no organization that has built up the relationships with the religions and the communities of the world like AJC. That makes AJC the unique leader in this field. And this is something that's more important because politicians and diplomats, they come and go. But if you can build up a relationship with a religious community, with a culture, with a civilization, then that's something that's really sustainable. And that's something that's the most important thing for the Jewish people. And it's been a great privilege to have been part of that.
Thank you, David. We are celebrating the 60th year since Nostra Aetate and championing AJC's role before, during, after, over these decades, we had no idea that we would be in a liminal moment for the Catholic Church between the funeral of Pope Francis and the conclave, which is about to begin. Of course, we're focused on many things, including Catholic-Jewish relations. So in all of that context, how has Nostra Aetate fared 60 years later as we look backwards and forwards?
Well, we are, of course, at a rather sobering moment in time, and perhaps in many respects, for every 2 steps forward, there's been a step back. And yet, Catholic-Jewish relations, to a large degree, has withstood this storm, rather dramatically. You and I often say that we are actually in an era, a golden era, of Jewish-Catholic relations. We need to put it in perspective. I mean, we need to remember where we were. We need to remember that when Theodor Herzl was talking his wares around and met with the Pope at the time, Pope Pius X, the Pope refused to even entertain the idea of the establishment of a Jewish state because the idea of the return of the Jewish people to its homeland was an anathema. Now we've had 3 popes who have had state visits to Israel, giving its highest elected officials and religious leaders the greatest respect and recognition. 3 popes who have condemned anti-Semitism as a sin against God and man. And Pope Francis has articulated also the idea that it's impossible to be a true Christian and be an anti-Semite. We have been able to develop relationships with bishops' conferences around the world to the degree that they have stood up in many places very strongly against the resurgent anti-Semitism. To a large degree, the Catholic Church has become part of the solution as opposed to what it was historically as part of the problem. And I mentioned before that the degree to which they turn to us, to which they respect us. I think that we've got a great deal to be grateful for. And what's really interesting is, you know, they say the term for somebody who is being touted by the bookies, the bettors, as a candidate for a pope is called a papabile. And they say he who goes into the conclave as a papabile comes out as a cardinal. In other words, it's not generally whom you think it's going to be. But of the 5 main runners now that in all the different media putting forward, we have close relationships with 4 of them. I mean, that's incredible in historical terms. And let me give you another example. Earlier, some years ago, during Francis' tenure as Pope, there was he had recommended and already endorsed the appointment of a particular priest in Latin America to become a bishop. And we discovered that this priest, even if he was not viscerally anti-Semitic, had made some rather problematic statements. And we bring this to the attention of the Vatican, and that appointment of the bishop was withdrawn. Well, that's incredible. That means that we have an institution that listens to us and that engages with us, and our relationship with the leadership in Jerusalem is also very significant, despite the enormous complexity, because the local church, of course, is Palestinian. So I would say it's one of the great triumphs of history. Let me just add, I just said this before in the breakout session. No institution in the course of human history had delegitimized the Jewish people to the degree that the church had. We were not only no longer the recipients of the biblical promises, we were rejected by God, of the devil, in league with the devil. If we suffered, we deserved it. And that theology prepared the way for some of the greatest atrocities in the course of our history. To have gone from that to a situation where now these 3 popes have all spoken of us as the dearly elder brother of the church, of the original covenant, never broken and never to be broken, there is nothing like that in human history. And yes, sometimes there are disappointments. There are sometimes disappointments, and not everything that Pope Francis said we were happy about. But you've got to put it in perspective. These are tiny hiccups in comparison with the enormous achievements and the incredible blessing of Catholic-Jewish relations in our time.
So we understand ourselves as the global advocacy organization for the Jewish people. We saw that in our interreligious work in the run-up to Nostra Aetate. That's what our beloved mentor in life and in death, Rabbi Mark Tannenbaum, hoped to achieve. And we like to say that we want to lead in Muslim-Jewish relations in the 21st century the way we successfully led in Christian-Jewish relations in the 20th century. We just had a breakout with a couple hundred people. I thought that there was an enormous amount of optimism on the stage. And yet, we know that Christian-Jewish relations and Muslim-Jewish relations are not going to proceed in the same way for a variety of reasons. What are we talking about here in terms of the challenges and the progress and the differences?
So it's much easier to generalize about an institution when you're talking about the Catholic Church. It's really impossible to generalize when you're talking about a whole global religious culture of the Muslim world. So we really, if we're going to do any justice to that question, we have to break it down, and we don't really have time to do that effectively. But let's first of all observe that the challenge actually in relation to the Muslim world theologically is much, much easier than it is in relation to the Catholic world, to the Christian world. Whatever tensions there may have been historically with Islam, Islam never dehumanized us, never claimed that we were of the devil. And there was always a certain theological respect for Judaism, even if not always was that so politically. So the problem we have today with Islam is not a theological problem, just as the conflict in the Holy Land, in Israel, Palestine, is not essentially a religious conflict. Religion, of course, is exploited mercilessly in the process, but it's a territorial problem, it's a political problem. And therefore, if we could only resolve that political problem, the whole relationship with the Muslim world would be transformed. And that as a result, the longer this conflict is going on and being specifically sustained in Gaza, the more challenging it is for us in terms of our relationship with the Muslim world as a whole. And yet, as I said to a lady in the breakout session previously, don't make the elephant in the room into a dinosaur. It's not the only issue that Jews and Muslims have to talk about. Here in America, Jews and Muslims are both significant minorities that have shared interests. And the MJAC, the Muslim Jewish Advisory Council that you have, is a really important vehicle for promoting that understanding and that shared responsibility for the society at large. And people need to get to know one another. They need to be able to discover the heritage and the commonality that exists, because, in fact, no two religions are closer than Judaism and Islam. So there are big challenges that are impacted upon by those political realities, and there are great disappointments that we have experienced over the course of this last year and a half. But there have been also some wonderfully brave and significant voices that have not got enough acknowledgement and have not been disseminated widely enough. There have been some significant, if you like, silver linings to the terrible cloud, like the Dumlanrig Declaration now that just came between the British rabbinic leadership from all three denominations and the Muslim leadership, both Shia and Sunni, condemning violence and articulating a shared vision and need for cooperation. So there are things we need to be able to recognize as the bright spots. But in the end, as I think our colleague Dr. Ari Gordon said, we have no choice but to be able to persist determinedly with hope and with vision in this relationship for the benefit of our children, for the benefit of our grandchildren. You know, immediately after the Second World War, there were Jewish leaders, take a notable one amongst the Orthodox rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer Berkovitz, who said, it's not appropriate for Jews to waste their time on the Catholic Church or the Christian world. After all they've done to us, keep away from them. Maybe after 2 or 3 generations it might be possible. He didn't talk of this rather artificial distinction between theological or social. He said, they've done enough, we don't want to have anything to do with them. Thank God, not everybody took that line. Our colleague Rabbi Jim Rudin has written a book about how Cardinal Cushing and Cardinal Spielman had their impact upon Nostra Aetate, born out of those encounters with Jewish interlocutors. And it wasn't just in America. It was around the world. People who were not prepared to say, because of the terrible things that happen, we're giving up. No, precisely because of the terrible things, we are not giving up. And we are finding new ways to be able to forge understanding, collaboration, and cooperation, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because that is critical for the well-being of our children and grandchildren.
David just gave the great plea for the importance and value of interreligious and intergroup relations at the most challenging time for the Jewish people in our lifetimes. David, you are looking into the future. What is missing from interreligious relations from the Jewish perspective? We spoke about Christianity and Islam, what has been achieved, what has not yet been achieved. But we have a global architecture and expertise at AJC. What are we able to do that needs to be done now in the rest of the world?
Well, I think we've got a lot to do also internally. We actually do not, within the Jewish community, adequately appreciate both the importance of this work and what has been achieved in this work. So we need to be able to broaden that understanding in many different segments of our community. We also need to understand that because we've achieved great things in certain areas, especially in Catholic-Jewish relations, we must not rest on our laurels. Younger generations came up who knew not the Shoah or the period, who need to be re-educated in this area, and we've got to be in on it, just as we were. When I came into AJC, we had a program called CJEEP, which was working in schools, bringing rabbis and priests or members of the community, women and men, to be able to engage with the other communities. I think we've got to get back to that, because to assume that this is going to automatically be guaranteed because of what we achieved in the past is actually a fallacy. So we've got to redound our efforts in these areas. But there are new horizons, and there's a horizon which we did forge a very significant breakthrough some years ago, which needs to be further pursued, because there's enormous potential there. And I'm talking in relation to the Hindu world, to Hinduism and into American Indian community, which is not only Hindu, but primarily Hindu, and is deeply connected to religious Hindu movements, sustaining their identities and preserving their culture. And we've established, we were involved in the first Hindu-Jewish summits in Delhi and in Jerusalem, and then a summit here in the United States. And I think we need to work not just on a secular basis. Secular collaboration with communities is very important, but it's nowhere near good enough if you're avoiding the foundations of people's identities. There needs to be understanding of what people's religious sentiments are and what their values are. And I think there is great scope for greater Hindu-Jewish collaboration to strengthen the Jewish-Indian community's relationship here in America and to impact globally.
David, I've written to you personally, which you'll read in the tribute book, and I'll say it here now. Few, if any, have had the impact on behalf of the Jewish people on interreligious relations during the last 50 years, and I and we are grateful for all you have done representing AJC and the Jewish people in that regard. God bless you. Mazel tov. Enjoy. Enjoy the farewell tour.
Thank you, Noam.